They saying I'm done, they saying I'm through. Many rise against him, yeah, that's true. But I ain't running, I just move how grace do. Even when I hate loud, his voice cut through. They say God won't help him, man, that's cap. I seen him pull me out the trap. Lifted my head when I couldn't bounce back. She around my soul like bulletproof glass. But you, oh Lord, are a shield around me. My glory and the lifter of my head. I cried out loud, and you heard me. I laid down, slept and still ain't dead. But you, oh Lord, are a shield around me. My glory and the lifter of my head. I cried out loud, and you heard me. I woke up, mercy ain't fled.
Welcome to Rightly Divine the Word. And today we're going to jump straight into it. And the question for today is, what is wrong with the fig tree? What is wrong with the fig tree? The reason why I was compelled to do this lesson, because I think there's a misconception about what the story of the fig tree means and entailed. So I'm going to dig into it and see if you all agree. So once again, welcome to Rightly Dividing the Word, and we're going to jump straight into it. So we're going to begin with Mark 11, and it reads, starting at verse 12, and on the morrow, when they were come from Bethany, he was hungry. They talking about Jesus. Jesus was hungry. And seeing the fig tree afar off having leaves, he came, if haply he might find anything thereon. And when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for the time of figs was not yet. So this should spark a question from everybody, because Jesus is supposed to be all-knowing, and this is in the springtime. So the question is, why would there be an expectation to find something on a tree when yet it was not time for figs? So we're going to continue. And Jesus answered and said unto it, no man eat fruit of thee hereafter forever. And so the question becomes, why? What did the fig tree do? It was just growing. It was out of season. So why in the world would Jesus curse a fig tree forever? That in lies the question. What is wrong with the fig tree? And his disciples heard it. So we're going to deal with a fig tree, especially one that's in the spring. For many of y'all who don't know, fig trees grow their fruit, or their fruit is ready for harvest in the summertime. But yet, this was the week of Passion Week, which we know Passion Week occurred in the spring. Also, we know this Passion Week also followed the Jewish spring festival of Passover. So we're going to continue. So we're going to talk about the fig tree and what it does. So first, fig trees produce edible bicara. Fig trees produce an edible bicara, a crop bud in the early spring, and the main crop buds develop later in the season. The bicara, which is the first harvest of the year, develops on last year's growth and ripens in the summer. The main crop buds develops on the new growth and typically ripens late summer. Also, the thing about the bicara is it is edible. So remember, Jesus saw the fig tree from afar and it had leaves. So normally when a fig tree has leaves, it also has the edible Bickra, the edible buds. So there was an expectation to see fruit at that time. So park that in the back of your head because that's very important. That was an expectation to see fruit, even in the spring at that time. So why is that important? So Bickra is actually found in the Old Testament in the Hebrew text. And listen what it says in Hosea 9:10. And this is one of the few places that the term actually is used, Bickra and not fig. So remember, Bickra is an edible fruit that's early, that's edible during the springtime before the main harvest. So let's see what Hosea 9:10 states. Now, Hosea 9, starting at verse 10. I found Israel like grapes in the wilderness, and I saw your fathers as the first Bickra in the fig tree at her first time. So remember, most people think when Jesus is talking about the fig tree, he's talking about the nation of Israel. But the Bible is so precise, I want you to pay attention to what he really said. He said, I found Israel like grapes in the wilderness. And catch this, I saw your fathers as the first the Bickra, the edible fruit before the main harvest, in the fig tree at her first time. So the Bible does not refer to Israel as the fig tree or the Bickra. It refers to the fathers. And the question is, who are the fathers? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. And also, I'm going to just give the answer. Also, the priests. The priesthood is also the fathers. But he see the fathers as the first the Bickra. So you see this again. The same term, Bickra, is one of the two places that is found in the Bible. And let's see what it says again. Micah 7:1. Woe is me, for I am as when they have gathered the summer fruits, as the grape gleaning of the vintage. There is no cluster to eat. My soul desire the first ripe fruit. So here again, and the term here is Bickra again. So why is this important? So remember, we started in the New Testament in Mark 11, and we're going to continue in Mark 11, okay? And the reason why we're going to start with Mark 11, we're going to skip down to 15. So Mark 11:15, and they come to Jerusalem, and Jesus went into the temple and began to cast out them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers and the seats of them that sold doves. Then we're going to go to 16. And would not suffer that any man should carry any vessel through the temple. We're going to keep going. And he taught, saying unto them, is it not written, my house shall be called a nation, the house of prayer? And let me restate that. Isn't it written, my house shall be called of all nations, the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves. So we're going to park right here because, once again, remember when we started, Jesus noticed a fig tree with leaves, and he went to it with an expectation of having something to eat. So he was looking for the first ripe fruit. So here, Jesus went into the temple, which is representative of from far off, from the outside, as a fig tree with leaves. And with that, there's an expectation that there should be something edible in that place. But what did he find in that place? He found them that sold and bought in the temple, and he overthrew the tables of the money changers and the seats of them that sold doves. And then he capped it off by saying on 17, and he taught, saying to them, isn't it written, my house shall be called of all nations the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves. So I remember I said Bikra is the first fruit, and it refers to the fathers, not the nation itself. So once again, the temple here is representative of the fig tree with leaves, with an expectation that he shall find fruit, but that is not what he found. So he found it without fruit. But yet, remember I said it's the father. So them, who's the them? It is the Levites. It is the house of Aaron. It is the priests. He found them that sold and brought in the temple. And he found them that sold doves. And ye have made it a den of thieves. So he's talking about the priesthood here, not Israel as a nation as a whole. He's not talking about Israel as a nation as a whole. He's only talking about the priests, the people, the Levites, the people who are supposed to be caretaker of God's temple, but yet they've made it into a den of thieves. And we're going to continue because we're going to go to Mark 11:20. And it says, and in the morning as they passed by, they saw that the fig tree dried up from the roots. So I want you to pay attention. So now we're saying the next morning, after Jesus had already cursed the fig tree, when they had awake in the morning, they saw the same tree that he cursed. It had already dried up from the roots. It was dead. That fig tree would never grow again. Why? Because he killed it at the root. He killed it at the root. You're going to see why this is important later. So I want to go ahead and move on to Mark 22, and I'm going to go ahead and bring it on home. So Mark 22, and Jesus answering said unto them, have faith in God. 23, for verily I say unto you, that whoever shall say unto this mountain, be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he hath said shall come to pass, and he shall have whatsoever he saith. So pay close attention to this. So here's what Jesus is talking about right here. So Jesus remember this is Passion Week. Passover is coming up, and he's going to be put on the cross. He's going to die for our sins, okay? And so basically here, he's basically telling them to have faith, to believe in this mountain, because he knew he was going to be resurrected. He knew he was going to be resurrected. So here's the take-home message here. When Jesus died on the cross and was resurrected, what happened? The veil was torn. It was split in two. That was a symbolization of the destruction of the priesthood. Remember in an earlier lesson, I had taught you all that the priest, the high priest in particular, was the intercessor for the people, for the Jews. So he was the one who put the lamb and spread the blood into the holy place. And it was divided by a veil, because only the high priest could go behind the veil. But because Jesus knew that he was going to the cross and that he would be be raised, he gave them this. And Jesus answered, said unto them, have faith in God. Faith. Y'all really need to pay attention to this. For verily I say unto you, that whosoever shall say unto this mountain, be thou removed, and thou shalt cast it into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe in those things which he said shall come to pass, and he shall have whatsoever he said. So let me recap the whole thing here. So the fig tree, this story about the fig tree is representative of Jesus had an expectation of when he came into the temple, he would see faith and belief and the fruits that we described yesterday in the lesson, the fruit of the Spirit, those things. But what he saw was a den of thieves. So when he cursed the fig tree, this was the curse he was putting on to the priesthood about his death and resurrection. So when he rose from the dead and the veil was split, there was no need for an intercessor. There was no need for the priesthood. And remember, I said the bikra, that represented the priesthood, that represented the fathers. There was no need for them to intercede on our behalf anymore, that with the torn of the veil, we could come to Jesus himself. So that's why he cursed the fig tree. It's because that was to represent him walking into the temple and what the expectation would be. And he knew he was going to destroy the priesthood forever. And so most people get this wrong. They think that this is a story and they say it's about Israel, but it doesn't make sense because God in the Old Testament had already said Israel will forever be his people. So, and like I said, we have many people that think that today's Christians have replaced Israel, and that's completely not true. He only destroyed the priesthood. He only destroyed the priesthood. And that is what the fig tree story is all about. If you like that message, please comment, like, share, and hit subscribe. And I will see you on the next message. Peace.
I put my ego on the throne and call that power. Fed my flesh all day, watch my peace get sour. Built my whole name like it had some weight. Whole time I was dressed, but the soul was suffering. Built little crowns out of smoke and applause, caught it control, but I still had no peace. Look